So, welcome back to Kdog'S Movies. We're doing this classics from the Criterion Collection. So tonight we're going to take a look at one I haven't seen in quite some time. It's actually quite a classic. I mean, definitely a classic film. From 1957. It is Spine number 555 from United Artists, starring Burt Lancaster, Tony Curtis. It is The Sweet Smell of Success. Yes, this is one that if you watch Criterion's Closet Picks, a lot of people want to point to this one. Of course, it is a classic film from back in the day. So, I don't know if this is still in print. It very well may be with the Criterion Collection. Directed by Alexander McKendrick. Photographed by James Wong Howe. I'm not going to waste any time. We're just going to get right into this film. From 1957, released by United Artists originally, it is The Sweet Smell of Success. So that was Sweet Smell of Success from 1957, starring Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis. What goes on in this film is this isn't a noir by any stretch of the imagination, but I would say it's a dark story, but it's not. There's some horrible things that happen in this film, but it's not as bad as, let's say, Double Indemnity was. So what goes on here? This film is about three people, really. So it's Tony Curtis plays a character by the name of Sidney Falco. Sidney Falco is he's a press agent. Basically, he is out to get any information about somebody who is famous or somebody that's performing entertainment or anything like that, and any information about that person, he is to bring it to one of the respected columnists in the newspapers. Okay, so now these are not like. Now these newspapers were like they were gossip papers is what they were. And so they were gossip papers, and so what Sidney Falco, Tony Curtis, is doing is that he is getting any information about famous people to get to these people that write these columns. And the one he's really trying to get his name in is this writer by the name of J.J. Hunsicker, played by Burt Lancaster. But Burt Lancaster's Hunsicker, he could be praising or he could tear down. Anything, he has enough clout that whatever he puts in his column, his article, sells. People believe it. And so there's this weird situation going on. Well, as it turns out, J.J. Hunsicker's sister is in love with a jazz musician. that Hunsaker hates this guy. He hates him with a passion and just loves to do whatever he can in his column to tear this guy down and just belittle him and so on and so forth. But his sister is madly in love with the man. And so much so that they are dating, and they seek to be engaged. Well, that's not very pleasing to Hunsaker. As a matter of fact, the character goes to they keep calling him Dallas. That's his last name, but Dallas goes to J.J. Hunsaker and to seek his approval because there is no parents. There's a big age gap between J.J. Hunsaker and his sister. And he's more like the guardian of her. And it's almost to the point where it's unhealthy. Or actually, I wouldn't say almost, but it is unhealthy the way it's portrayed in this, because it's almost like he is married to her. And like no other guy can be in her life. And Sidney Falco, Tony Curtis, he's trying to be the bridge of the whole situation. He's getting information about Dallas, and at the same time he's trying to help the sister maintain the relationship and actually get engaged to the guy. And so it almost seems like it's double crossing, or double standard type stuff, but not really, because J.J. Hunsaker gets what he wants. He wants the engagement called off, and so spoiler alert, that happens in the film, but there's some other stuff that happens that Hunsaker is so menacing that he's got dirty cops paid off to handle certain people. But the way the story is written is that it has kind of I don't want to say a happy ending, but it has kind of an ambiguous ending where the sister finally leaves her controlling brother and possibly rekindle the guy who she was seeing, because they do break it off, but there's like I said, the crooked cops are paid off and they beat the guy up, but so she's, spoiler alert, at the end of the film she walks out of the apartment and goes to see if she can get into where her former fiance is being kept at a hospital. So this is not it's not quite the happy ending, but it has this ending to it that's kind of just an ambiguous ending, to where possibly things worked out, and that because Sidney Falco, he runs into the crooked cop at the end, he gets knocked out and beaten up as well. Was he like the guy that was trying to detour things or whatever? But yeah, that's Sweet Smell of Success. And as I was kind of going through some of the features on this, there's one feature that talks about the film. Not talks about the film, but this film was written by Ernest Lehman. And Ernest Lehman was actually a press agent for a real gossip columnist. And that gossip columnist was Walter Winchell. Very famous guy who pioneered pretty much modern day journalism. And J.J. Hunsaker is modeled right after Walter Winchell. And there's some things that they change. You know, obviously they changed the name and the situations and so on and so forth. But it's J.J. Hunsaker's model right after Walter Winchell. And including what he would do to people and the unhealthy relationships. Now, the only thing that was different there was that it was, instead of it being the sister, it was a daughter. Yeah. But yeah, that was Sweet Smell of Success from 1957. So, let's go on to the next movie. So, we're going to try to pull a double feature tonight. So, this one is from 1941. And last time we did a film with Barbara Stanwyck. Well, we're going to do another film with Barbara Stanwyck. This here is Barbara Stanwyck and Henry Fonda in a film written and directed by Preston Sturges. It is The Lady Eve from 1941. Yeah, so keep the lights dim. This one was originally from Paramount Pictures, which has been acquired by Universal. So, originally from Paramount Pictures in 1941. Barbara Stanwyck, Henry Fonda, and Preston Sturges's The Lady Eve. Okay, so that was The Lady Eve from 1941, originally released by Paramount Pictures, that has been acquired by Universal Pictures. Now, I finally found out why a lot of Paramount's earlier films are in the hands of Universal. That would be due to Universal's former owner, Lew Wasserman. He owned a company called MCA, and he developed, basically like what Ted Turner did, was like he built up his own enough reputation and power and money that he was able to acquire film rights and distribution to classic films and so forth. So, and that's why a lot of classic Paramount titles, such as this film and Going My Way and several other films, are now on Universal. But this was The Lady Eve, and this is a very humorous screwball comedy from Preston Sturges. So we have in this film Barbara Stanwyck. She plays this card sharp, and her father is also a card sharp, but they are on a boat coming back from the Amazon, where they picked up Henry Fonda, who plays Charles Pike. Now, Charles Pike is he's an heir to a brewery, to a brewer, and so he has inherited all this money, but he's not making beer or anything like that. He wants to be a scientist who's studying snakes. I believe they call that a herpetologist. I could be. I'm mixed. I'm mixed up when it comes to that, but like he's a scientist studying snakes, and so he he boards this ferry getting back to the United States, where he meets this woman by the name of Jean Harrington. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Jean Harrington. I've got IMDb on my phone, but yeah, Jean Harrington, and it's kind of a on and off strange romance, but they call it off before they leave to get off the boat. And so Jean has this bright idea that she would disguise herself, being the con artist that she is, as this British aristocratic type lady and call herself Eve. And so Jean is portraying a British, like a rich Brit character. And of course you have this Henry Fonda as Charles Pike. Every time he's around her, he does something very, very... He stumbles, he falls whenever something happens, whenever he's just around her, because it's just like love has struck him and it's knocking him on his feet, or something is falling on his head, or something. And the movie takes some weird turns, like... The ending of the film is probably like just the most ridiculous, because it's... Now I'm saying that ridiculous as a well-made comedy trope, that he still doesn't know that the woman whom he married and the woman who he is in love with is the same person. And like... oh man, it's cleverly done, cleverly done. I don't know if you could pull something off like this today. You may be able to do it. I'm not talking like political correctness or anything like that, but would an audience find it interesting? That's what I'm getting at. But you may be able to do it. I see a lot of like if you do a romantic comedy to this day, I see a lot of like, there's been like the whole, how do I want to say it? Like the love triangle type of situations, where you usually have two guys fighting over a girl. That's kind of what it is now, but this of course has been done several times throughout TV shows and cinema history, in which a person takes on a disguise as another person, and by the end of the show it just becomes too much. Well, this didn't do that. I mean, obviously, Barbara Stanwyck is playing one person who is conning, being a con and portraying another personality to win the heart of Henry Fonda. And normally, if this was done like a few years later, it would be, the character would just be, it would just hit it would come to a head, where the character would just be overrun and has to be in like two places at the same time. Another example of that would be, I guess, like an example that would be like the climax of Mrs. Doubtfire. Because you know how Robin Williams and Mrs. Doubtfire, he's at the same restaurant, and he has to be both Mrs. Doubtfire and himself at the same time with two different parties, but it's really one person that's doing it. So that's how you would do a story like that today. But the Lady Eve, that's where it's cleverly done. How, like, did she ever tell him that, okay, I was Eve? Okay. But yeah, clever, just a clever screwball comedy love triangle movie of just where life has an interesting way of fulfilling its way. So, that was the Lady Eve. Now, I didn't mention the spine number. This is the spine number 103. Yeah, that's in the collection. So, yeah, 103 for the Lady Eve. So, that's going to do it for tonight. Stay tuned for in the next portion of this video. We'll have another film, at least. Well, welcome back to the next segment. So, here it is the next day, and I think I'm going to do 2 again this time. In the meantime, of course, you hear this in about every video I do. I got my laundry to do, so that's a good time to do it. So, while this film plays, I'm going to be doing the laundry while watching the film with you. So, this next one, last night we watched a film with Henry Fonda, The Lady Eve, which was a screwball comedy from the 1940s. Well, we're going to fast forward back to the year 1957. And actually also today we're going to take a look at a double feature from the same director. Now, this first one I'm going to show is, again, from 1957. Now, this film has garnered, I don't know how much praise. Like, it's unanimously, when people talk about the blueprint of what a courtroom drama is, they point to this film. And it has been remade a few times. One time, it was remade, like one of the remake. The first time I ever saw this story, I watched actually the 1990s remake, which was, it was made for television. It was made for Showtime in the mid to late 1990s, and it had an all-star cast in that film as well, and it was directed by William Friedkin. But we're going to take a look at the original 1957 Sidney Lumet directed 12 Angry Men. Yes, this is a great film. It's a great story. I'll get into like my history with this film after we watch it, because this movie is just so iconic, so well made, and it's so just electrifying. Now, at the time, it wasn't. It was actually a box office flop back in its day, but over the years has garnered, it has become the blueprint of the courtroom drama. So, and you have Henry Fonda being the main. Henry Fonda is the main actor in the film, but he's joined by several terrific and well-known actors. So let's run down who those people are. Henry Fonda, Lee J. Cobb, Ed Begley, E.G. Marshall, Jack Warden, Martin Balsam, John Felder, Jack Klugman, Edward Binns, Joseph Sweeney, George Vakosevic. I'm sorry, 4 names I butcher. And Robert Webber, with the screenplay by Reginald Rose, produced by Reginald Rose and Henry Fonda, directed by Sidney Lumet. In 1957, from United Artists, it is 12 Angry Men. So let's gather around and watch these 12 men get completely heated over a crime. So, again, sit back, enjoy. Hopefully this is your first time viewing this film. If, sit back and enjoy 12 Angry Men. Okay, so 12 Angry Men from 1957, directed by Sidney Lumet, with Henry Fonda leading the cast. This film, again, it's a staple amongst courtroom dramas, and when you watch this film, you become one of the jurors, and you're just so frustrated by the end of this film. And you are so frustrated by, like, aren't you convinced? Isn't this enough evidence? Or, like, because there's just some of the people are just so ignorant. They are very ignorant. And this was, this obviously was a film that was very much a product of the time, and taking a stance on racism and things of that nature. It's just, of course, when the film opens up, we never saw what happened in the trial. We know very, very little. It just opens up with the judge saying to the jury, you got a big responsibility to do. And of course, this is at the time when the death penalty was, and of course the death penalty is still in play, but this was believed to be New York City, and the death penalty was still in play at the time, and of course it was by the electric chair. And we don't know what happened during the trial. All we know is the discussion between the jurors themselves in this one room. And of course it's hot before they finally put air conditioning in inside courthouses and courtrooms. But it just boils up and boils up, because there's one juror number 8, played by Henry Fonda, who has a reasonable doubt that the young man, who's a Hispanic, did not kill his father. But everybody else is convinced that he did it. And so, little by little, he starts putting that little seed of question what you hear, question what you're hearing, question what you saw, and maybe think about it a little bit. Because you see me all the time. I'm always touching because I'm constantly itching or whatever, and of course one of the jurors is finally convinced, like, hey, that one person do you think told a truthful testimony? Maybe they didn't, because they were trying to cover up the fact that they were aging, and the fact that they had to wear eyeglasses because of their age. And what's interesting about this film is that this film you don't hear any of the characters' names until the end. McConnell, and Davis. Okay, but that's it. The rest of the, but even as credited, it is jurors 1 through 12. It's never this person, this person, this person. It's the juror numbers. And that's what I find creative about this story, is that they don't use any names. They never do in this film. And of course, every other iteration about this film that has been made of this film, it's the same thing. They never use names. It's always the jurors. And of course, my first introduction to this film was actually not this film at all. It was actually the 1990s, mid-1990s remake directed by William Friedkin. And it was made for Showtime. And it had an all-star cast that had Tony Danza, Jack Lemmon, Hume Cronin, Ozzie Davis, who else? James Gandolfini, Michael T. Williamson, and Courtney B. Vance. Those are just the few that I can name off. There were some other people in there too. But that was how I was introduced to it. And of course, it was for high school English. And my teacher at the time knew that I was kind of struggled with things. And of course, at that time, the curriculum was we read the book and then we watch the movie based on the book. And the William Friedkin version was the one we watched. And of course, I rented it before going in. And how. But when we read the story, we read the original Reginald Rose screenplay, which was for this film. Because when William Friedkin readapted it, Reginald Rose went back and rewrote the screenplay, and it was Reginald Rose that did that version as well for the screenplay. And so he went back in and added in modern language, such as a little bit of profanity. Now, it wasn't rated R; it was PG-13, but still, it was the same thing. So he went in and put in more PG-13 language, as opposed to this back in the day. They couldn't use any profanity. It would have been, the film would have been censored. There is one profanity that's uttered in this film, but it's a mild, compared to today, it's a mild profanity. It's juror number 9. He gets hit with a wad of paper bouncing off a fan, and it says, "That's a damn stupid thing to do." So, yeah, that's the one they let squeak by. But even though, even though that wasn't really allowed, they weren't supposed to be doing that. But we have, let's see who we have here in the cast of this film. We have, and of course, this is a nice thing about Criterion, is all the essays and information that is about the production of the film, and of course the supplements, the special features that come with it. And it has the listing of the cast there, and of course they do this with every insert booklet. So juror number 1, Martin Balsam, he's also the foreman. Juror number 2, John Felder. Juror number 3, Lee J. Cobb. And of course, he's the one that has the most trouble in this film. As we can see, that his it's his personal effects that really affect what's going to be the outcome of this young boy. Juror number 4, E.G. Marshall. Juror number 5, Jack Klugman. Juror number 6, Edward Benz. Juror number 7, Jack Warden. Juror number 8, Henry Fonda. Juror number 9, Joseph Sweeney. Juror 10, Ed Begley. Juror number 11, George Volshovic. Juror number 12, Robert Weber. Again, juror number 11, I'm butchering that actor's name because it's a foreign name, but 12 Angry Men, again, has been adapted several times. This was the big screen adaptation, independently produced. Henry Fonda was the producer behind it, and Sidney Lumet at the time was a no-name director. He had directed some stuff for television at the time, and so that's why Henry Fonda thought he would be a good choice to be the director, because it would keep things low, but also Lumet knew how to do things on the small budget and keep it tight. So this film does not leave it's within the confines of this one room, the jury room. Now there is a bathroom that they go into, and of course you just see them go to the sink, maybe splash some water on their face, wash their hands, so on and so forth, because that's about all you could show. You could not even show the toilet bowl. You could only show a sink. But yeah, I still think that this film is a very, very good film, and it's really set the bar for what courtroom drama can be and how intriguing it can be. Now, it wasn't the first, but I'm just saying it set the bar of how intense and how dramatic each character is, and how you are to tell that story. Again, it had been adapted several times. It had been adapted once as a play, then it went to television, then there was this version, which is the main staple version, and then you have the William Friedkin television version for Showtime, and then there's been other films that have come since, also setting the bar for how to tell this story. So, 12 Angry Men. Do check it out. Now we're going to go on to another Sidney Lumet film. This is from 1964. It is... before we do that, I better point out the spine number. I forgot, there's a theme here. Criterion Collection. Okay, on Criterion, it is spine number 591 for 12 Angry Men. So, yeah, you just look for this cover. And now, we're going to go on to spine number 1011. We have from 1964, starring Walter Matthau, Dan O'Hurley, also Edward Benz, Larry Hagman, and introducing Fritz Weaver, as well as Henry Fonda as the president. From 1964, released by Columbia Pictures, it is Fail-Safe. Yeah, so this is more of a thriller. What I know of this film is that it's about the Cold War and about, the threat of thermonuclear war in the Soviet Union and all that stuff that was involved with that. So let's check it out. From 1964, it's Fail-Safe. Okay, so that was Fail-Safe from 1964. This movie is definitely a signature of the times that it was made in. And I don't want to say it's dated in any way, because we still deal with threat of war and terror to this day. We're still dealing with all that stuff. Just how it's done is completely different than what is depicted in this film. At the time, it was the Cold War, and so global thermonuclear war was the big thing, and it was between us and the Soviet Union. Now, that being said, now this film, this is what I've noticed out of a ton of Sidney Lumet's pictures, and I've seen quite a number of them. There's this film, we just watched 12 Angry Men, Network, Power, just to name a few. I noticed that a lot of his films are kind of ensemble pieces. He'll bring on like the best actors and the best people that he'll surround, but there's no single star. Everybody gets a moment in a Lumet film, I've noticed. So you have Henry Fonda, who is the president, and then you have Walter Matthau. You have his character, and he's the one that's he's the one that's really kind of championing pro-America here. And Dan Hurley, General Black, Larry Hagman as Buck, the translator, and Colonel Grady, who's the pilot, who's gone AWOL. There's nobody that says that they're the star of the picture. Everybody gets a moment in this film that is pretty serious, and you keep watching till the end, like what ultimately happens. Now, again, we still deal with these types of terror to this day. I mean, like for right now, we're dealing with COVID. And, it's just, the interesting thing is that how just a few people sitting in the midst of a room somewhere, just talking over telephones or computers, can affect the lives of millions. And of course, this film was during the Cold War, so it's global thermonuclear war. We still have chemical weapons, we still have nukes, we still have all that stuff. But also, now we have to think in terms of, like with COVID, bacteria and viruses now. So this was a pretty serious film, and when it came out in its time, so that where I think it still holds up now. what makes it dated is that it was during the Cold War, but now we have this. But now, since we're dealing with terrorism now, and we're dealing with bioterrorism, you know, things like bacteria, viruses, and things of that nature being unleashed to the public that we are not immune to. We don't know. So, yeah, it's definitely a film that says, hey, maybe we should stop and think about the consequences of our decisions. You know, millions of people can die if we don't stop and think for a moment about what we're doing. You know, so that was Failsafe from 1964. Again, that was in the Criterion Collection, spine number 1011. Just look for that cover and look for that spine. Of course, I'm doing this in black and white as a special effect, but so I think I'm going to close out this video. We'll be back with another video. We got some more that we could talk about. So from me to you, see you later.